Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, Harry Symeou. And I'm delighted to say on this very special edition leading up to the Arsenal-Manchester United game on Wednesday night, I'm joined by my colleague, my friend, first and foremost, Scott Saunders. Scott, good to be back behind a microphone alongside you.
Thank you for inviting me on. Big game tomorrow. Whenever you're listening to this, it's a big game Wednesday night, and nice to be making stuff and chatting to you on camera again, Harry.
Absolutely. I don't suspect it's going to stay as nice as it has at the beginning because there's probably going to be some disagreements along the way, but hey, that's what it's all about. We've got so much to get into because not only do we have this fixture to preview, but we've got to react to last night's FA Cup third round draw where our two sides were put against one another. And I don't know about you, I feel really pissed off about that because you look at who everybody else got, non-league teams, League Two teams, all the other sides that you'd look at as potential candidates for this FA Cup. Both sides could probably do with a trophy. I think it's fair to say that United probably won't have the league campaign they were hoping for. They could kind of salvage the season a bit like they did last year with an FA Cup, for example. And for us, it's not looking like we're going to win the league right now. I know some Arsenal fans are super positive, but I'm still a little bit apprehensive about that.
Being on the United side of things, United have had this tradition in recent years of being drawn at home in cup competitions. We've won the League Cup and the FA Cup in the last 2 years. And I think United would do a big, difficult game. And now they've got Tottenham away in the League Cup and Arsenal away in the FA Cup. So, look, it's a difficult one, but I think United have had some simple-ish draws in the past. So I can't complain too much.
You can't complain. Well, we've had our last 3 FA Cup draws have been now Manchester United, Liverpool and Manchester City. So I think you can understand why Arsenal fans are feeling a little bit frustrated about it. Let's talk about the title race, though, as well, Scott, because I've said for a little while now, probably since the Newcastle United game, that Arsenal, in my opinion, are out of it. And I don't mean they're out of it in the sense of they're in a position that's impossible to recover from. But until they start to make that recovery and close the gap on Liverpool, which they haven't managed to do in recent weeks, I'm going to say they're out of it until something changes. It's not a position you can't come back from, but how can I sit here with chest right now and say Arsenal are in this title race? They're a long way behind. How do you see it?
I know what you're like. So I'll give some chest on your behalf, I would say. Look, Liverpool have been fantastic this year. I don't think they're absolutely perfect. They've had 2 amazing results in the Champions League against Real Madrid and against City at the weekend. But look, I think the picture could change pretty quick. You got Newcastle away and Everton away in the next few days. And look, Liverpool might come through that unscathed. They might have 4 to 6 points. And Arsenal United, as we'll talk about a little bit later on, it could be a difficult game for Arsenal. It could be. So things can change pretty quickly. For me, I've been pretty vocal on where I think City stand in this. There's a difference between City and Arsenal at the moment. I think City are on a bit of a downturn. You can tell by the results. But Arsenal have just started to pick things up a little bit. Got a favourable run of fixtures coming up as well. I include United in that. So I think this is probably the time of the season where Arsenal can, having had all those difficult fixtures early on, I think now's the time. Just get some wins together, keep the consistency coming. Chelsea have got a decent run coming up as well, but this is the time of the season which sets your path. And I think, I look at Arsenal at the moment, I think you're not out of it yet. I think, if anything, you're the closest team that can challenge Liverpool for me.
Momentum is a massive thing because when you look at the league table in its current format, Manchester City are only 2 points behind Arsenal, but one side look as though they've found their rhythm and their flow again and that they're on this upward trajectory again, or at least getting back to what people expected for them. And the other side just look completely devoid of ideas. I did a reaction pod to the Manchester City-Liverpool game because I felt like it was a game that was so significant for us that it was worth some reaction to. And I was praising Liverpool, and I got a lot of stick, by the way, from a lot of listeners who was like, is this a Liverpool podcast? No, I was being fair because I do see a more mature Liverpool. I do see a Liverpool that seemed to be able to turn it on and off. And I don't know that Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool were always able to do that as great as they were. So credit where it's due. But from a City perspective, I mean, if you were a City fan, you'd be really concerned right now because nothing is working. Whatever Pep does, however he lines them up, however he sets them up, it's just not working at the minute. And I looked at their bench the other day, and there are players on there that if you go back sort of 12, 18 months, you'd have said, well, these are some of Manchester City's stars. Do you remember the reaction when Doku came in? Do you remember the reaction when they signed Grealish? Kevin De Bruyne can't get a look in. And all these guys are sitting on the bench. Phil Foden, what on earth has happened to him?
I honestly, I have this big thesis on why I think the whole City. I said it at the start of the season on a pod that we were doing. It was just some weird signs behind the scenes about City, like selling Alvarez and not replacing him. I always thought was really weird. And I know there's lots of stuff off pitch which has to have to be dealt with in terms of the charges which City obviously deny. But in terms of on the pitch, you look at players like the drop off in Kyle Walker has been massive. Kevin De Bruyne, yes, he's on the bench. Injured a lot. He's had a hamstring injury last season, which kept him out for the first half of last season, and this season he's had a hamstring injury. And now I've seen speculation that from Neville and Carragher actually that not all things are right between him and Pep. But I think it's just natural. I think Kevin De Bruyne has been one of the most vocal players about how many games he is playing, and I think that's caught up with him. And I think that's the case for a lot of City players. And when you play for City and when you play for Pep and Pep's football, the most important thing is intensity underneath it all. And when you've won 6 out of 7 titles, you've won a treble, you've won all these trophies, how long can you listen to the same message with the same intensity? And I think that's the problem that City are facing for me. And when you drop off in like a few percent in terms of intensity, the drop off can be massive in terms of what you see. So I think City are embarking on a rebuild, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And I was actually quite surprised that Pep Guardiola signed the new contract that he did. I thought that absolutely. This was something that he probably needed to take a step back from and maybe assess a little bit better than he has. You know, what I saw from him at the weekend when he kind of bit back at sort of the Liverpool supporters, that's not what we're used to from Pep. He's normally so calm, so calculated. He normally talks down rivalries and talks really respectfully in an attempt, I think, to take the sting out of the tails of clubs like Liverpool, who when you go away to can be quite on you and it can be a really difficult environment. So I was surprised by that. That's
the thing. Like, Pep doesn't hold 6 fingers up ever.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and I think Pep is looking at this and thinking, what I'm saying to these guys isn't working, or my team's been found out. I think it's just...
Was that his way of saying, it's not me? The 6 titles thing? It's not me.
I think he was a little bit rattled by... I think Liverpool... He might have thought Liverpool fans liked him. You know, but this is football banter, and football rivalry, right? But I think Pep only knows one way. Like, and it's been a way which has swept every trophy before him for a long time, 15 years or whatever it is. But he's never been one to he's made like subtle changes to reinvent his teams, like whether that's bringing John Stones in midfield or like having massive fullbacks who are centre-backs, and found little tweaks within that system. But the fundamental idea has always been there. He's not like a manager who can go and play loads of different systems and sit off the ball and be prepared to protect the lead. That's not the way he does it. So I think what's happening is all of that is, for me, unraveling. Look, City could turn around and, you know, end up winning the league. I'm not saying they won't win the league, but do you look at this City team and think they're going to win 18 games in a row? I don't.
No, me neither. And I think being formidable has been a big part of why they've been able to roll aside teams and sweep people away, because a lot of the time the game is won before you even start.
Yeah.
And a lot of teams will turn up against Manchester City in years gone by and think, well, we've got no chance today. I mean, if we can survive 20 minutes, we've done well. But now there'll be teams taking encouragement from what they're seeing, and they turn up and they go, hold on a minute, this side isn't unbeatable. This side is a side that can be gotten at. And I think that mentality shift that you might see in their opposition is probably why they can't now go on and do or put together the type of run that would see them go on and win the league. I'd say that now, but you know, I wouldn't bet against it because it's Manchester City and their history suggests under Pep Guardiola that they are capable. So until they prove otherwise, in terms of a big comeback, you kind of got to just keep your powder dry.
It could all just be Rodri, but I think it's deeper than that.
Yeah, personally. It feels deeper. Let's turn our attention to our two teams. New manager for you guys, Ruben Amorim, a coach I really, really like. You know that I wasn't a big fan of Erik ten Hag. We had many debates and discussions about that over the last couple of years. Amorim feels like the real deal. What's the start to life at Manchester United been for Ruben Amorim? What's it been like? How's he gotten on? Have you been quietly encouraged by what you've seen?
I do like him. I do like him. I like his honesty. I did have a few concerns about like when he went on the touchline at Ipswich after the first game and he said, I don't like doing media. And
you're the Manchester United manager.
You kind of have to do that, and I think maybe they might have had a word with him behind the scenes about like this is just what it's like. there's a lot more than just being on the training pitch in this job. And I think since that point, he's been a lot lighter. But in terms of like the fundamentals, I think he's come into this club and knows the extent of the problems he's got to fix. There's been managers in the past like Mourinho and maybe Ten Hag to an extent who's preferred to just defend the performances even though they've been pretty awful and say, well, we won a trophy, or we played some good football.
Just on that though, do you think that's something that you can get, like what Amorim's doing now, where he's being really honest? You can do that at the beginning. You can get away with that at the beginning. But after a certain period of time, you have to go into defensive mode, don't you?
Yeah, and he has to have results to back this up. And I think I'm really excited for this Arsenal game, to be honest, because I don't know how United will apply themselves. United are not favourites by any stretch. I think Arsenal overwhelming favourites to win this game, and not to put the pressure on or anything like that. But this is an Arsenal team that has set an example of how to build from the very bottom, and I think United are probably at that point at the moment. But Amorim, after the Ipswich game, not the Ipswich game, the Everton game, United won that 4-0. I wasn't overly convinced by the performance, and neither was he. And the fact that he is calling out like that United are winning by scoring goals in moments and maybe papering over the cracks a little bit, even on a big 4-0 win, which United haven't had big wins over Premier League rivals for a long time, really. It's been a difficult... Every Premier League game is difficult for United at the moment, but that on the surface, the scoreline showed that it was a pretty easy day, but the performance wasn't as the scoreline suggested. So I think what he's going to do with the whole backroom staff has changed, the upper echelons of the club have changed, and I think what there is now is a united front to fix the problems that have been plaguing United for as long as it's been. So I think Amorim, he'll have some difficult moments. Maybe there'll be one Wednesday night, I don't know. But I like that he's honest. I like that he's trying to change things. And we are starting to see, even now, some different tactical ideas. Obviously, the formation. And other little things, like squaring the ball across the box for a tap-in. Like, we barely ever see that. That's just one of the easiest ways to score a goal nowadays in modern football. So we're starting to see some good things from him straight away, but it's going to be a long road. Yeah,
for sure. You mentioned the problems at the football club and the fact that Manchester United are maybe more united now and trying to fix it all. I did want to bring up ticket prices because Manchester United have been in the news for this. Am I right in saying is a flat price of something like £66?
For no matter what age. Yeah.
Which to me seems a little bit ridiculous, if I'm being honest, but I'm not going to throw stones from a glass house, because I think that this problem with ticket pricing, it's a Premier League problem, and it probably filters down even into the Championship as well. When you think about what you're watching in some cases and what you're paying for it, it's completely out of sync. So what do you make of Manchester United taking the steps that they have and then sort of half defending it with a statement just recently? Again, I'm not throwing stones at Manchester United, because I would say that the prices at Arsenal are ridiculous as well. Yeah. And I think because Arsenal are playing really well generally at the moment, and because they're in title races and they're in the Champions League, you can kind of get away with it as a club because the demand is so high, there'll always be someone ready to pay that money.
Yeah.
But in Manchester United's case, where maybe the football's not going the way they want it to just yet, it feels like an even bigger kick in the gut to the supporters.
Oh, it definitely is. I mean, the floor price being £66 for, kids.
To watch like Ipswich.
To watch any game is it's really poor from United. They've had a lot of criticism. There's been protests united between Everton and Everton, and I think there's other clubs involved in this as well. These protests, because it's as you say, it's a common problem. Look, the price of football has been going a long way from normal for a long time, and watching, how are you going to bring a new generation of fans in to love your football club for the rest of their life if the barrier to getting into matches is so wide? We live in an economy which is really difficult for people who are like our age and downwards, just in general anyway, to kind of get through life in. And I think the prices seem to be going up everywhere. But what Brentford did this morning, £10. That's the kind of thing that I think a lot of football clubs should be doing, and fans need to make their voices heard to make sure that these clubs can't get away with this. But it's a losing battle, And look, United have copped a lot of stick for, like, there's been job cuts, this kind of thing over the last year since Ineos came in, And this is the latest thing. I think this is too on the nose for me. I don't know whether they're going to reverse this decision or whether pressure's going to build up and this kind of thing. But yeah, it's definitely not a good look. And like if you're trying to bring a new generation of fans in to love your football club and like bring the atmosphere up, it's more. It seems like fans are customers nowadays rather than fans. You know?
And it just feels like, to me, when you look at the money that they bring in from gate receipts in comparison to what they get from TV deals. And, Man United and Arsenal are both in European competitions, which means they get even more TV revenue than your average Premier League club. Obviously, they're massive clubs as well, the size of them, the global appeal, all of that, the merchandising. There's so many ways of making money. I just feel like if I were in charge of any football club, that's the last thing I would want to do. That would be the last thing on my list of trying to generate greater revenues. Because, again, you add... And I hate this term tourist fans, because I hate it when people say that, because I know from doing this podcast, there are a lot of people all over the world that get up at ungodly hours and watch Arsenal and, follow the club really, really closely. I don't mean those people. The people I mean is the people that would be in London for a weekend and go, well, I'm in London. I have no affiliation to Arsenal Football Club, but seeing as I'm here, I'm going to go to that game. And I'm going to pay an extortionate price because it's a one-off thing for me and I don't care. And I'm going to turn up with no real feeling towards either side, with no real interest in the game. I'm there for the experience. And that does impact the atmosphere. And the bigger the stadium you have, the more of those people you'll get. Tottenham have found that out now. They used to take the mick out of us because of our atmosphere at the Emirates. And they're all complaining about the same thing now at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. The bigger the ground, the more of that you get. And Old Trafford has that problem too. I just think it's the last thing you should be going after, the people that are there every single week. And that's not to say they're better fans than everybody else overseas, abroad. I'm not saying that for a second, but it's this prioritization of like corporate packages and all of that stuff that drives me mad. It's like the soul of football is just completely being ripped away.
And on United's side, the fact that one of Ratcliffe's big selling points, I used to go to Old Trafford and pay a tenner as a kid or something like that, or really cheap prices to go and watch the team in my youth. The fact that United have got to this point now, it doesn't do him any favours at all. Look, United they stuck by Erik ten Hag in the summer. Then they decided, no, actually, 9 games in, we're going to get rid of you. We've got to pay you off. We all know United's transfer record, how much money they spent over the last few years, and a lot of that has not been Ineos's fault or problem. They haven't to fix a lot of the mess. And a lot of the decisions that they're making, I kind of see where they're coming from. But like you say, I think this is the low one. Yeah. Don't undercut, don't exploit loyalty.
And also as well, the Ten Hag thing as well is a relevant point as well, because you could have got rid of him in the summer by bringing him, by going through the beginning of the season sort of with him. You just incurred additional costs by like having to then get Ruben Amorim out at that point. And we know that Ruben Amorim, by the way, was interested in a move away because he was talking with West Ham. So that could have been done earlier. And then if it's not mid-season, you probably get a better deal in terms of what you got to pay in terms of compensation, and the whole thing works better. So yeah, I agree with you. Like there are decisions that have been made that, and again, I'm not saying my club is perfect because we're not. I think it's
a football problem.
It's a football problem. Absolutely. We're all in the same boat. Let's talk a little bit about the game on Wednesday night specifically. From an Arsenal point of view, there's a few injury concerns. Mikel Arteta speaking to the media right now at the time of recording, so you'll be watching or listening to this after, and we won't have known exactly what he said. Knowing Mikel Arteta, he ain't going to tell you anything anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But obviously going into the game, Partey was missing at the weekend with a muscular problem. Charles Watts reported yesterday that he hadn't trained yet but was expected to return to training this week. Might be too late though for the Manchester United game. Mikel Merino missed the game with a knee issue. Calafiori went off injured. Bukayo Saka went off as if he'd been sort of battered throughout the game, which certainly was the case when I watched it back. So there are some concerns for Arsenal. For Manchester United, what do you feel like the 11 could look like? Is it going to be the new formation first of all? Yeah. And who, in your opinion, fits into that? Because, of course, you've got some suspensions as well.
Yeah, so Lisandro Martinez and Kobbie Mainoo picked up their 5th bookings of the season against Everton in quick succession. So both of them are suspended for this. And generally, though, I think United's, in terms of injury problems and that kind of thing in the recent past, is quite clear. Obviously, losing Martinez and losing Mainoo is a blow. But I think what you'll see is essentially the same maybe with some rotations, a similar unit to what you've seen over the last couple of games. I think Amad Diallo in particular has been fantastic, great energy. He's been playing at right wing back. And obviously, I think you mentioned to me earlier, you'd like to see Martinelli maybe start on that side. What happens with him, I don't know. I have a little bit of a concern over his defensive capabilities, and maybe you need somebody who can do both in both directions. But he's been playing so well that if he's fit, I'd expect him to play. But in terms of the players that'll come in, I think Luke Shaw's been on the verge of, getting back to full fitness, and Amorim saying essentially that they have to hold him back and he wants to play more. I would expect him to play left centre back. Mazraoui's been fantastic. Matthias de Ligt, I think that's your back three. And then what happens on the left side, I'm not entirely sure at the moment. Maybe Dallo stays there unless there's some concerns about the right side and maybe he switches over. But then what do you do on that left side anyway? Ugarte, I think, has been pretty important over the last couple of games. You can see his tenacity and his energy. That's going to be really important in a game like this. Maybe him and Casemiro. And then the front three, you can pick anybody really. Maybe they'll try and pick some players who can offer a threat in behind. So Marcus Rashford wouldn't surprise me at all. Maybe Højlund as well.
The reason I've got some concerns about this game is because
you do.
I do because look, I think Manchester United, I've always said this throughout the Erik ten Hag era, and one of my big reasons for going at him as the issue essentially was that I always look at that side and I think there are match winners in there. Your Bruno Fernandes's, your Marcus Rashford's. Look, Amorim comes in, he's got a couple of goals. All of a sudden, it's completely different. You look at people like, Garnacho. I think he's another match winner. I think there's a lot of players in those Manchester United ranks that can decide games. But also, maybe I've got a bit of PTSD from when Ruben Amorim came with Sporting and knocked us out of the Europa
taking
League.
heart from that. Yeah.
You should. I don't think David Raya is going to get beaten from just inside his own half like Aaron Ramsdale did that night. But you should take heart from that. The thing I like about Ruben Amorim is that he's not just a manager that is, okay, he's got his way and he knows what he wants to do and he's got his system and he's got his setup. But one of the things that really impressed me during his time at Sporting, particularly in Europe, was that he would turn up somewhere and he wouldn't be arrogant enough to think that he could just play his way if the level of the opposition was better. He was, I think, humble enough to say, we're not quite at this level, so we're going to adjust our game. And I expect Man United to do that on Wednesday night. I do think they'll sit deep. And as you said, I think they'll try and play on the break with the likes of Rashford, pace like that, Diallo, those kinds of people. Garnacho maybe might get a game. I don't know. So yeah, that's kind of how I see it going.
To be fair, and that's one of the big things I like about Amorim as well. He's always struck me as that guy to do exactly what you said there, not be too proud to say that I'm going to play my way and that is the only way that I'm going to play. I always prefer managers that even going through where we've had conversations on video in the past where I even criticised Pep for a little while for not changing the way that he played football. He has done so in the more recent years, but I always like managers to be able to just be humble and say look, let's do it a different way today. It doesn't always have to be the way that I want to do it, but be comfortable with that. There's just fundamentals in Amorim's system and his team, like qualities that he wants to see out of his team, and he always underlines this point. It doesn't matter. The system doesn't matter. We might change the system in possession and out of possession or at different points in the game. We change it round to give us the best chance of winning games. And I think what you'll do, he's got past experience, obviously, of going to Arsenal and trying to, get results there and had decent success. So he's got that experience of going to Arsenal before. It's a new team. So obviously there's a lot of holes in this United team at the moment, which Arsenal could well exploit, but at least he's got that. He's not going to be overawed by the atmosphere or anything like that, No,
absolutely. I think he will come good at Manchester United, and I think if the recruitment is right and it complements what he's trying to do, then I think United could be moving in the right direction very, very quickly. I think this season's a little bit too late, but I think he can set the groundwork and lay those foundations, which is obviously very, very important, as we know, because it took some time at Arsenal for Mikel Arteta to get the team that he wanted, the team to the level that it is today. I look at Arsenal's team and I think it's really important that certain players make this one, because otherwise we're significantly weaker. I'm pretty confident in saying that Saka will play.
Me too.
I know he's taken a couple of kicks, but he seems to limp off of every match injured, doesn't he? And he's fine. Raya would be in goal for me. Timber, Saliba and Gabriel would be the three definites in my back four. Calafiori will be in there as well, as long as he can play. But he did go off holding his groin at the weekend, which didn't look good. If he doesn't play, I think you might see Zinchenko come in. Now, I'm not completely convinced that that's the way to go. I think I'd go Kivior.
If Zinchenko ended up playing, I think, especially if Ahmad starts at right wing back, I think that is a potential place for United to exploit. So I'd be surprised, but
Yeah, I just look at the Kivior at left back thing, and I feel like it's something that Mikel Arteta felt served its purpose during various points of last season, but he hasn't really wanted to go to at points this season. So I'm a little bit worried that maybe that is something that he doesn't quite feel is the right thing anymore. And listen, it's rotten luck because Ben White's out, which means Timber can't play there. Tomiyasu's still out, which is really frustrating. Calafiori seems to be breaking down way too often. If it's got to be Kivior, I think that's the way to go over Zinchenko. Midfield, we don't know about Partey yet. Rice, I think, is finally looking like the Declan Rice we had last season. I will play Jorginho in the midfield in the absence of Thomas Partey. I think he's been incredible every time he's played this season. He gives us a control. He's a tempo setter. People talk a lot about him getting caught on transitions. I think he's shown in the last few weeks, especially, that when he's had opportunities, that he's the kind of guy that reads the game so well that sometimes that can get him out of trouble. Odegaard, everybody's seen the difference since he's come back. Unbelievable player. And then my front three would be Saka on the right, Martinelli on the left, because I think he would stretch Manchester United that bit more than Leandro Trossard, although he scored in back-to-back games. And then Kai Havertz through the middle. I think that's the way that Arteta should go. Let us know your 11s in the comment section as well. I'd love to hear them. I love it when people pull apart mine, so get involved in the comment section. Predictions, though, to wrap up. How do you see this one going? And we're going to go with our heads rather than our hearts, I think. We got to. This is a prediction.
Yeah. Look, I think Arsenal are... If you'd asked me this a couple of weeks ago, maybe I'd have given you a different answer. But I think the way that Arsenal, you scored 13 goals in 3 games, that's terrifying, really. With the fact that United are still trying to piece their way forward, and Amorim is having to not had much time to train the team, as he keeps reminding us as well. The patterns aren't really there at the moment. I think he will do things on the night which mean United are quite difficult to break down and difficult to beat. So I don't think Arsenal will hammer United by any means, but I think narrow win for me, 2-3-1 probably.
I'm going to go Arsenal 2, Manchester United 0. That's my prediction. Get yours in the comment section below. Make sure you leave a like on the video, subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. If you're listening on audio, please do leave us a review as well. Those really, really do help. Make sure you give Scott a follow on all his social platforms. I'll leave the handle in the description below. Check out his Promised Land podcast as well. If you're a Manchester United fan, I'm sure, given the title, we'll get a few of you stumbling over. But go over to Scott's content, check it out. There's brilliant, regular Manchester United content there. Thank you to Scott for joining me, and we'll see you all post-match over on the Patreon side with the match day reaction piece. And then, of course, we'll be back with you on Thursday morning to break down the game in detail. Thanks for joining us. Until the next one, take care.